Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Hannafin, and welcome to PAYDIRT, a Penn State football show. This show is brought to you by our sponsors, Funk Brewing, the official craft beer partner of PAYDIRT. Now, we're big fans of Funk Citrus IPA and Silent Disco IPA, but this month, also check out the Funk Pumpkin Ale. Yes, it's fall in summer. And also keep an eye out for the Lucent Realms Nordic IPA. It only comes out once a year, and it's available as of the last week of July. You can find a variety of Funk Brewing beers at your favorite beer distributor and grocery store. Visit funkbrewing.com to learn where and how you can get their fantastic products. Must be 21 years or older to purchase. Please drink responsibly. Also, PAYDIRT is brought to you by our partners at BetOnline, who continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including Major League Baseball, the latest fighting news, and even next season's early NFL futures. And with NFL training camp right around the corner, BetOnline has opened up odds for team wins, division futures, and of course, the Super Bowl. Head to betonline.ag or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. And use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to get the bonus and get into the action. PAYDIRT is presented by BetOnline, where the game starts. And we encourage all of you to head to shop.believe.com, that's shop.beleav.com, and search PAYDIRT for our two t-shirts. One has the official PAYDIRT logo on the chest right over the heart. It comes in white, navy blue, and black. And the other has the official PAYDIRT word mark over the heart, and on the back, very reminiscent of the 2012 Penn State football team, it's got Matt McGloin's name and number, as we are about to honor the 10-year anniversary, especially of that 2012 team. Again, head to shop.believe.com, that's shop.beleav.com, and search PAYDIRT for both our t-shirts. Thank you all for joining us on this bonus episode of PAYDIRT, a Penn State football show. I'm Tom Hannafin, and I am joined by Jeff Atnella. Currently, he is the head of brand development for Smack Apparel, which is some fantastic t-shirts and products that we're going to get into in a moment. But he is also a lifelong Penn State football fan, Penn State fan altogether. So this is very appropriate, Jeff, in that this episode is all about what it means to be a Penn State football fan. However, your resume is like super diverse. We've got the t-shirt company, we've got your love for Penn State, but you're a South Florida and Tampa guy, went to USF. You're a former MLS goalkeeper where you had a lot of success. And you also have dabbled a little bit as a sports media personality with like ESPN, NHL Network, and even locally in Tampa. So you're kind of tough to summarize.
I like it that way, though. Keeps people guessing.
So walk me through like how did you get connected with Penn State? What's the connection there?
So Penn State, it was funny because my dad swears that he never really like pushed me towards it, but that's where my dad went to school. So my family all grew up in Pennsylvania. My dad went to Penn State, my uncle went to Penn State, and just for as long as I can remember watching football, Penn State was like the only thing I cared about. Penn State was my college team. It's who I rooted for. I had back when wallpaper was cool, I had the Penn State wallpaper donning my room up until, I left for college. And it's just always been in my blood. Like Penn State football has just always been the thing that I cheer for. And, my dad swears he didn't ingrain it in my head as a baby, but he must have, because that's the only thing I remember.
So my mom would play the Penn State Blue Band in the house, like on a tape, once upon a time when tape decks existed. So we got indoctrinated very early. Was that going on in your house?
Not as much. I really don't have any early memories of my dad truly sitting there and brainwashing me. My earliest memory is we were supposed to go to the Capital One Bowl. They were playing, I forget who they were playing. I think it was Kentucky back in the 90s. And we were supposed to go, and that was going to be my first Penn State football game. But it just did what it did in Florida and rained the entire time. And I just complained that we weren't going. And that's my earliest memory of actually being a Penn State fan and being disappointed, which is kind of a Penn State
been a theme lately. Yeah, unfortunately.
That was my first introduction to it, and the first thing that I really remember. But it's just been the team that I've cheered for my entire life, and there's no signs of that slowing down.
We were talking about this the other day via text message. Is that so? You're playing soccer at the University of South Florida, but your coaching staff was very aware that if Penn State ever came calling, you were gone.
Yeah.
Did you ever look into going to Penn State, or was there any recruitment by Penn State soccer?
I went to a couple camps when I was like in middle school, so probably a little bit early to be getting thrown on people's radars. But it was tough back then. The landscape of soccer and the landscape of, getting scouted was very different. So I never got any calls from Penn State, but it was very well known that, I was a very vocal Penn State supporter. There was one time during the recruiting process that Penn State played USF in football, and I was very vocally cheering for Penn State. And the coaches just kind of knew that, if this guy's going to come, he's going to be a Penn State fan. He's going to be vocal about it. And I think it was a pretty good understanding that had the situation occurred where Penn State came in the last minute, there was just no chance that they were going to get me to go to USF. But, the coaches were always pretty cool about it. And had the transfer portal been a thing, and, it would have been easy to transfer schools, things might have gone a little bit differently for me. But, I was excited about my time at USF, but it was definitely well aware that I was cheering for Penn State football no matter what was going on.
Now, it worked out because you're a Tampa guy. You're a big Tampa Bay Lightning fan, especially. Congratulations on another win. Everything's been going really great. Or no, did they win?
They lost.
They lost the Stanley Cup. Shows you how much
right. We got two, though.
Yeah.
And we have Tom Brady. So, there's only.
You guys are doing fine.
Yeah.
Just fine. But you're a Tampa guy. So what was your experience like at USF when you were playing soccer?
It was good. That was back in the days of the Big East, thoughts and prayers to the old Big East, because that was such a fun conference. We would travel all the time. Like being the team in South Florida that was going up to the Northeast all the time was great for me because I love seeing family, and, it gave me a chance to see the country and see some pretty cool universities. Even that was back when Notre Dame was in the Big East with us. So we got to do a lot of pretty cool things there. And, we were fortunate enough to make the Elite Eight. We made the Elite Eight once. We won the Big East. And so I had a great all-around experience. And for me, it was like the perfect distance from home and college, because I could still pop in and get the laundry done or get that free meal. But then at the same time, like they always had to give me the heads up if they were coming my way. So for me, the experience was great. And that was even back when, if you can even remember this, a lot of people do, because I always see it popping up on timelines, when USF my freshman year was ranked number 2 in the country. So there was like a big football push there during my time there. And of course, things have gone down since then. But so for me, it was a great experience all around. And, I have no complaints about where I ended up at school. But like I said, had the transfer portal been a thing, I might have, made a different decision.
What was the name of that quarterback? Was it Matt Grothy?
Matt Grothy, yeah.
Number 8. What was it like? Because he was like, I think he was around the same time or right on the heels of Tim Tebow. And everybody's like, this is Tim Tebow 2.0.
Yeah, it was pretty much the timeline synced up pretty well, because Tebow, I think, had just gotten done winning the Heisman and all that. And then, little old South Florida had kind of a guy doing the similar things. I remember playing Clemson and beating them handily. We would go play NC State and we would win those games easily. And it was funny because my freshman year was the year that they kind of blew up, and not many people were on campus. It was a really big commuter school. But then after they got that football recognition, admissions ticked up, people living on campus, people like moving from other parts of the country to come to South Florida became a thing, which it never was before. So that year really put him on the map. And then, I'll never forget the loss away at Piscataway, New Jersey, away at Rutgers on a Thursday night after they reached number 2 in the country. Everything just kind of went downhill from there. But it was a fun little ride while we were on it.
Something about losing to Rutgers, even when Rutgers was good, there's something about losing to Rutgers. It's just like,
I've been to, I mean, no disrespect, but I've been to Piscataway, and it's just so cold, and there's just nothing going on out there. So when you lose, it's just, everything just falls right on top of you, right as the whistle blows. It's just like so depressing to lose up there.
You want to talk about depressing? I went to the Penn State Illinois 9 overtime loss this past season. Oh my God. Not only was the game terrible, but then it's like rainy, it's cold, and it's just, this game is wearing on and on and on. Oh,
I remember exactly what I was doing while I was watching that, and fielding multiple text messages, just getting bombarded with people asking what's going on. It was at the moment you're like, oh, this overtime thing's going to be awesome. Like, I love this shootout style. Like, let's let it rip. And then 5 or 6 overtimes in, when no one's scoring, you're kind of like, I'm not really confident in my team's ability anymore.
Right. Oh my. So I don't bet very often, but my buddy Levy had kind of got me into it a little bit. So like I like to do it like in game once I can kind of feel where the score is going. So by like the
live bet, I like the
live bet. It's risky, and it made it all the more interesting. So I bet that I think 40 points was the over under. And I bet that I think sometime in the third quarter. So then it hits overtime, and I forget exactly what the score was when it hit overtime, but the final was 20-18. So part of me is just like, how did we just lose to Illinois? And I'm like, oh, I just made some money. Nice, But also like we're in 9 overtimes, and I'm like, wait, I might lose this bet and we're gonna lose the game.
And it wasn't even, it was like that slow torture where it wasn't like people were scoring nonstop. It was like
No,
touchdown.
it
Oh,
was awful.
excitement. It was like, oh my God, pitiful, 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 pitiful. Yeah,
So
that was
bad.
something. That was quite the experience.
When's the last time you got to a Penn State game at Beaver Stadium, I guess?
At Beaver Stadium. So in 2000, man, I want to say it was 16 or 17. I went to go see them when they played Michigan.
Mm.
I forget exactly what year it was, but I went to an away game at Michigan. My uncle has season tickets, so I flew to his house in Virginia. We went up, did the RV, so I got the full RV tailgate the whole weekend experience. They ended up losing the game, which was tough, but I mean, just kind of getting to hang out in the RVs and do that whole scene was pretty fun.
When you talk to people about being a Penn State fan, I know I get the reaction of, oh, it's a cult.
Mhm.
People are insane when they're Penn State fans. And I disagree. I think it's a very tight knit family. But how do you explain it to other people?
Well, I would argue that that's just all of college football.
Yep.
If you have a passionate fan base, which a lot of the big programs, the programs that have been a long time, the programs that have a lot of history, the best way that I describe it to people in my circles is, it's kind of like the English Premier League in soccer. Things have been around for so long and there's just so much history and tradition that it becomes a way of your lifestyle. It's not, you know what I mean? It's just bigger. It's
Yeah.
bigger than just watching football. It's in your bloodline. Your family grew up around it and they pass down the tradition. So when I try to explain it, it's more that's just the culture of college football and this is the school and this is the team that I support. I do think that, the Penn State fan base, I'm a little bit removed, so I hope nobody takes offense to this. I do think that the Penn State fan base does have that sense of like we should be undefeated every single year, and
I agree with that.
that's you know what I mean, and that's kind of tough when I'm around fellow Penn State fans when you're complaining about being in the big, you know what I mean, back when there were big games and it wasn't the college football playoff, but you're complaining about being in those big bowl games where I kind of view it as we used to never be in those big bowl games except for a couple times every now and then we would randomly pop up, but now that they're consistently winning, I'm pretty happy. Of course, you want them to take the next leap, but at the same time, I think the gains have been, pretty impressive since I've been a fan.
You talk about a passionate fan base, and that's absolutely what it is. And I think there are Penn State fans who have a sense of entitlement, and then there's others who I think are a little more realistic and see what has happened the last handful of years and be like, okay, the expectations can be high, but just be realistic. I think that's really important. And passionate fan bases is kind of what your business practice has become all about. As I mentioned, you're the head of brand development at a t-shirt company, for lack of a better description, called Smack Apparel. And I'm very proud that PAYDIRT and Smack Apparel are going to be partners here. Starting now, you can head to smackapparel.com and use the promo code PAYDIRT at checkout to get 5% off your order. What makes Smack Apparel different than all these other t-shirt and apparel companies out there?
So we're very different in the fact that we're not licensed. So we've been doing this for 24 years, and I'll tell you a funny, quick story of how it kind of got started. My father-in-law started the business. He was a Florida State grad, and back in the days of Steve Spurrier dominance down in Florida,
Mm.
he just made a shirt that said, "Never met a man I didn't like, Will Rogers," and then on the back it just said, "Will Rogers never met Steve Spurrier." And he took it to campuses, he took it to the SEC schools, he took it to Florida State, and it just blew up. People were laughing, people were really finding it. It was a unique twist on a college sports t-shirt, and it really tapped into the emotions of fans and just people didn't like Steve Spurrier. So it really resonated with a lot of people. And then he took that business model and that idea and just kind of ran with it. And he's been doing this, and we've been doing this now for 24 years. So for us, it's about finding those things that really tap into the emotions of fans, really, drive home the rivalries, the hatred that these schools have for each other, and just really try to connect with the people that are truly, truly fans of a team. And we put it on a shirt and we want people to enjoy wearing it. For us, it's fun whenever we wear these shirts to walk through tailgates and people pointing it out and smiling and, finding some humor in it, or, just trying to make it more of an interactive shirt than just your standard licensed shirt that's going to have your team name on it. Because for us, it's all about really trying to find ways to connect with the fans and trying to have some fun with the whole idea.
It's the thing I love about Smack is because as a Penn State fan, Penn State is naturally a very simple, plain, traditional aesthetic as a brand. It's navy blue and white, maybe some gray, just single stripe on the helmet, no names on the back. It's a very plain jersey, et cetera. And then every year, I say this all the time, is that Penn State fans look for new merchandise, whether it be from Nike or Under Armour or something like that. And the thing that gets Penn State fans excited, because Penn State apparel can be so bland, is font. Like, that's the height of the excitement. But you sent me a t-shirt that I think you have on right now. If you can angle your laptop to it, it says "the worst," and it's got the state of Ohio, and it says "the" in quotation, "the worst." And that was because recently Ohio State actually trademarked the word "the" because they like to call themselves the Ohio State University. You contacted me and you showed me this shirt, and I was like, hell yes, man. It was a great idea.
Yeah, well, I mean, they are the worst, right?
They are. They're absolutely a pain in the butt because they win all the time, and I'm sick of it.
Exactly. And those are the types of things we like to do. We wait for topical moments, or we see something pop up with a sports headline that we believe that fans are going to react to. And I mean, in a world where Penn State's playing Ohio State and you're walking around Happy Valley this year, if people are wearing this shirt, everyone's going to laugh at it. Everyone's going to be excited about it, and people are going to really be fired up about the idea. And for us, it's all about trying to tap into those emotions of the fans. And when you play Ohio State, everyone is like, oh, if we could just beat Ohio State, they're the worst. They're the worst. So for us, when they trademark the word "the," we're like, okay, how can we do this in a way that, we're not going to get into trouble, but at the same time kind of relays the messages that other fan bases are feeling about them. And that's just exactly what we're all about.
For anybody that's ever been to a Penn State football tailgate, you probably know that year to year, Penn State marketing students are actually given the task of trying to sell, usually it's like beer koozies or something like that, or drink koozies, whatever you want to call it. And the concept is to dance around licensing and to get around some of those issues. So I've talked to you about this before. I have a koozie that has virtually the same thing. It's a block, print of the state of Ohio, and it says "worst state ever." And on the back, it's got Pennsylvania, and that says "best state ever." So seeing these things, it's not uncommon in marketing. You guys have gotten some flack for it in the past, but you guys have come up with some really creative ideas at the same time. What is like the next step for you guys? You think it's Smack, growing your brand?
For us, we're trying to really get more of a presence on college campuses and just more of a presence kind of in the world of media a little bit. So, for us, it's how do we get our shirts in front of people? Because the licensing and, with the way that Fanatics is set up now, everybody just buys from Fanatics. It's an easy, you're going to buy a shirt. I'm guilty of it too. I see a clean,
mindless. Yeah,
I see a clean Penn State shirt. I think it'll look good on me. I'm going to buy it. And it just says the school name, and it's just very, just a standard nice looking shirt. I'm going to buy it. And I think that a lot of people are that way. But for us, because we're not licensed and so many people are just going down the route of, oh, we can only buy licensed things because we don't want to risk anything, or, just kind of what goes with that. For us, we're trying to grow our presence on college campuses and within the fan bases and within the circles, whether that's through social media, whether that's through finding ambassadors on campus and things like that, because we really believe that if you hold up our shirt, if you find any true sports fan, and you hold up our shirt next to a shirt that just says the team name, 10 times out of 10, you're going to choose our shirt. So for us, we used to be really big in retail on campuses, but because of that direction, we got to find new, unique ways to get our shirts in front of people. And, using social media, using ambassadors on campus and things like that, and using, platforms like you have and yourself and people that really believe in what we're doing is how we're going to be able to do that. And we're excited to kind of go down that path.
That's fantastic. Speaking of tailgating, what are some of your Penn State football tailgating memories?
Man, so I've only had the chance because of the way my seasons have been and my schedule. I've only been to Happy Valley twice for 2 games.
Wow, we got to get those numbers up, man. Seriously.
Yeah, listen, I retired, so the numbers are going way up. Don't worry. Yeah, no worries there. We're jacking those numbers up. But, it's funny. As luck would have it, my first Penn State game was like the first game that Paterno wasn't the coach. So that was a very that was a
Wow.
very odd,
Very
very
somber.
different experience. But to be honest, it was a way that I really found out what Penn State was all about, the community and how people embraced each other and just kind of the culture that it is and how much everybody truly, truly loves it in Happy Valley and the fans around it, the way that everybody came out and supported one another. It was a very unique experience for me because it was the first time that I really felt like, oh my gosh, this is a community that truly, truly loves each other. And to be honest, it almost made me fall in love with the whole thing more because I got to experience that for the first time. But then, of course, when I went with my uncle to the Michigan game, just boozing late, just boozing
Yeah.
all, just boozing, hitting the bars, hitting the scenes, and drinking pretty much all night, waking up, getting after it again, cooking eggs in the morning, and then walking down to the stadium and just checking out campus the whole time, just saying hi to everybody and just throwing the football. And for those are the things that if I'm playing soccer during the season, I don't get to do. So, just the simple fact of finding some friends and fans and throwing the pigskin with people in a parking lot while I'm drinking some beers, that was that was all I needed to be happy.
Oh, it's perfect. That's just the fall for me in a nutshell. It's the best. I try to make it to like 1 or 2 games a year, and sometimes scheduling stuff comes up, and it's just gotten it gets more and more expensive every year. Hotels are tough, especially in State College, and frankly the entire radius around State College, Pennsylvania, just gets booked out in a heartbeat. So it's always fun to see. I love that on a Saturday, during football season, State College is the third most populous city in Pennsylvania. Like, it just swells. It's so much fun. And now that you've retired from Major League Soccer, you're working on a lot of different things. Like, you were on Paul Feinbaum's show on ESPN very recently. You did some coverage on the NHL Network as well in the lead up to the Stanley Cup final this past year. How have these opportunities kind of materialized for you?
I did a really good job when I was playing. There's a lot of people that kind of shy away from the media, but I always kind of took the approach that, this is an opportunity that if somebody asked you to do something or if you could do a favor for somebody, it's a good opportunity to connect with people. And I always did a good job of, throughout my playing career, doing the best I could to connect with people. And if people wanted something from me, I was very, you know what I mean? I was somebody that would always say yes because I graduated in communications and I always wanted to kind of perfect what I was going to do after. And I always felt like having the opportunity to have a microphone in your face was a good chance for me to continue to grow and build so that when I was going to retire, I could do different things and feel comfortable doing those types of things. So with the NHL, I knew one of the reporters really well. We had kind of a relationship, and again, our shirts are a good conversation icebreaker because they're funny and people really dig them if you're fans. So she mentioned about going on wearing a shirt talking about Tampa. So that's how that opportunity popped up. And the Paul Feinbaum show was cool because kind of a similar thing. I sent him a shirt. I sent him a picture of the worst shirt.
Yeah.
Somebody that I had connected with down when they were here at the SEC basketball tournament because we had a really funny Auburn shirt. It was Bruce Pearl mocking Alabama, doing the crane, running around the court. So when the SEC tournament was here, we just had so much fun going out there and trying to sell that shirt when the SEC tournament was here in Tampa. But during that process, Paul Feinbaum was down here, and then I connected with one of their producers who was a big MLS fan, and we kind of spitballed the idea back and forth about talking about rivalry gear. So through connections, through the shirts, and just kind of I love talking about all things sports. So these opportunities have been popping up, and fortunately for me, when I was in my playing career, I had a little bit of mindset to look towards the future, and it's been kind of cool getting the opportunities that I have.
I'm thinking of all the things that you guys have been able to capitalize on, and especially the ridiculous amount of headlines during the offseason for college football in terms of like Saban and Jimbo going at each other. Alabama and Texas A&M is going to be a crazy game this year. I can't wait for that. Brian Kelly all of a sudden developing a Louisiana accent. Like, there's so many things. And then especially with conference realignment has popped up, and we talked about it before in terms of RIP the Big East, and it seems like RIP the Big 12, RIP the Pac 12. Like, as a fan, is this like kind of unidentifiable to you at this point, what college football's turned into?
A little bit, but I think the writing was kind of on the wall, right? So once Texas and Oklahoma made the jump, it was kind of
Yes.
like, all right, that's the domino. So now people are going to be jumping ship, and the hard part for us is I hope that through all this realignment, you don't lose those rivalry games that have meant so much for fans. And of course, that's something that's going to happen. But there is so much history and rivalries and things like that, and so many different things that we play into with what we do, that as new rivalries are created, we'll be able to come up with new stuff. But so much of our stuff that we do is history, and it's just a different landscape. I think at the end of the day, the whole NIL and the whole money thing, it's going to change the landscape of college sports. But I've been seeing this a lot, and it's the total truth. I'm not going to stop watching on Saturdays no matter what happens, because that's how I spend my Saturdays, and I love watching football on Saturdays. And
Yeah.
it's not going to change what we do, because there's always, like you said, right? Just this offseason, there's been about 10 headlines that have stayed in the news cycle. That we spoke about this off air, but you got the quarterback of the Jets,
Oh, Zach Wilson. Oh God, the
Zach
story
Wilson
about
with
what
moms,
is
and
his
we come up with a
mom's.
shirt.
Was it his mom's best friend?
Yeah, you got
Is
him.
that the story? Okay.
Rumors coming out that he's getting with his mom's best friend, and then we come up with a
Allegedly,
mom shirt,
we'll
and
protect him. Allegedly, yeah.
yeah. So the news cycle for sports never really stops. So for us, that's a great thing. But at the same time, I'm gonna miss some of these old rivalries if they end up going away.
Yeah, like I would be hopeful personally, like Penn State and Pitt. I would love to see that be something that's maybe within the Big Ten. West Virginia, once upon a time, had a rivalry with Penn State, so I'd love to see something like that. There's rumors of like Notre Dame potentially not being able to be independent for much longer, and that like they'd be out in the cold to a degree. Not granted they have their NBC deal, but them potentially in the Big Ten. There's a lot of interesting options that I think when you and I were younger it was all geographical and it was all like there were actually 12 teams in the in the Big 12 and 10 in the Big 10, and now none of it matters. It's just the brand of the conference is king. It's so weird.
It's going to be interesting. I'm very interested to see what the Big 12 does, because they have like the central states on lock. And now
Yes.
they've branched out to the southeast. They have UCF. They've expanded that way. They're up in Ohio, and now
Mhm.
if they're able to absorb some Pac-12 teams, they're going to go out west too. So, in an odd way, the Big 12 is lining themselves up where they have coverage throughout the entire country if they're able to get some of these Pac-12 teams. Which, when all this realignment started, it was like, oh, the Big 12 is dead. They're
Yeah.
going to die. Like, everyone go pluck their teams because it's over. But it really looks like they might end up being the third conference with the most power, which I don't think many people saw coming.
No, and they just broke off talks with the Pac-12. Apparently, they were trying to come to some sort of alliance, and I think what was it during the regular season this past season? Was it the Big Ten, the, I think the Big 12 and the ACC, or maybe it was the ACC, Big Ten, and Pac-12 try to form some sort of unwritten alliance? Do I have that right?
They called it that too. They were like, "We are the alliance," and then
Right. I got
it was
flashbacks to
everybody.
like WWE versus WCW and ECW, and I'm like, okay, cool, man.
It was everybody except the SEC, and then the Big Ten just Trojan horsed them and went in and blocked a couple of teams and got out.
But it's become about TV markets. To your point, like you can capitalize on, like, for instance, if they have the center of the United States, and then say they went to the Southwest, it's just not as big of a TV market. Maybe if you go grab Arizona and Arizona State, yeah, and then had UCLA and USC still been there, but now it seems that the Big Ten is like, we're going to capitalize on all the big cities and TV markets, and the SEC is just galvanizing whole states at a time. There's rumors that UNC could jump from the ACC, and I think Miami and Florida State make a ton of sense to the SEC. Clemson makes a ton of sense. I mean, there's too many of these opportunities where it's like, well, yeah, you might as well grab the rivalry as a whole, as you said, Texas and Oklahoma. It's a no brainer.
Right, you just get them as a package deal. I was reading something because I spent a lot of time out west. Right, I was in Utah for 4 years, and then I spent the last 5 years out in Oregon. And I was reading something where states are trying to mandate that you can't take one without the other, or they're trying to make it so that you have to be
Oh,
a
right.
package deal. So it's
The
like, all right, so if you imagine in a world where Oregon, right, and no disrespect to Oregon State, Corvallis is an awesome city. If you've ever been
right,
there, it's like they call it Core Vegas. It's a good time. But if you're Oregon and you have this huge program, and then they mandate a law that you can't go without Oregon State, your rival, and that
right.
ends up being the downfall of whatever conference you're trying to join. Could you imagine that type of hatred in a rivalry where it's like,
I know.
hey,
It
we
costs
can't
us a
go
lot of
because,
money. Yeah.
right? We can't go because little brother can't get the invite. And now, so it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. And, I think that the fun part will be this next 3 or 4 year window where these schools that are outspoken about leaving are still playing in those conferences. So then, for us, the hatred of those schools is only just skyrocketed. So it's a real hatred, I think, with Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12. These Big 12 teams hate them a little bit more. And, for us, that's good stuff because we could just tap into that.
Yeah, like I hope we still get to see like Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. I really enjoy that rivalry, and frankly, both teams have continued to be good. To your point, Oregon State has dropped off so much in the last 5 to 10 years that it's unfortunate. And frankly, the money in Nike behind Oregon. Not to say that they're not behind Oregon State, but Oregon is their mantelpiece, so to speak. And then the same with Under Armour in Maryland is that now you've got to be thinking about the companies and the networks that are behind these schools, not necessarily like, oh, how are they doing on the field? It's weird.
Yeah, it's a totally different. I mean, just a totally different ball game, but it's cool. I mean, I went to a game out in Oregon that was on my bucket list when I knew I was retiring. I was like, I have to go to a game. I can't not
Sure.
go to a game. And it was a cool environment. Like I know that the out west gets a lot of flack for not being like the Big Ten or the SEC. And to be honest, I was pretty impressed with the environment, the stadium, just kind of the whole setup. So I do think there are certain schools out west that would do really well in these conferences. And I hope, man, I would love to see like an Oregon play Michigan, Oregon play Penn State. Like
Mm,
I would love to see that. Why not? Like I think that these
yeah.
types of games are good for college football, and if it's even possible, viewership will be even higher. But at the same time, you're losing traditions and things like that, which is a big part of college football.
Yeah, like Pac-12 versus Big Ten used to be something called the Rose Bowl, and that was really special because it was once a year. And now
Right.
that's even died out just because bowl games aren't necessarily as important as they used to be. Unfortunately, I think the Rose Bowl is still extraordinarily special, but you've got all these different schools that, oh well, they're in this college football playoff, so we can't use a Big Ten team, for instance. So they just inject somebody from the ACC, and it's like, okay, well, we lost that core value. So I agree with you. Having USC, UCLA, even in Oregon would be really cool just for some of those matchups. But
That's when, man,
looking,
when these bowl games lost like complete relevance, really, that's when I was
yeah,
like, oh, college football has changed forever. And I don't know.
yeah,
That one hurt because I love watching those big bowl games, and it really felt like if you were able to win, it actually meant something. But now, if you're not in the college playoff, it almost feels like, oh, you're just doing this for, guys are opting out, which I don't blame them.
yeah.
I completely understand that. But back in the day, I sound like an old timer, but it used to be you would never opt out for something like that for a chance to win that type of bowl game. So that part of college football going away hurts a little bit.
Yeah, and now that there's NIL benefits and guys can make some money, I always look at it as remember Michigan tight end Jake Butt.
Oh yeah. Oh
He was
yeah.
excellent, and he had a chance to go to the NFL early. He decided to stay. He gets hurt in his senior season, like major injury. Does wind up in the National Football League, but obviously drops a significant amount of rounds, which ultimately cost him a lot of money. And he still had a lot of injury issues to this day. So who's to say that had he gone early, that he would have been able to have a better career, make more money, or be healthier? Who knows? But no pun intended, is that you've got these options now with NIL that the peak 3, 4, 5 years of your life, potentially, if you're a college football star and that's all you amount to as an athlete, nothing wrong with that. Why not make money off of that? What if your career had just been USF? Wouldn't you have wanted to have profited off of that?
Yeah, of course. And it's funny because now I have a son, he's 2. Like we don't know what we're going to do with him, of course, right?
I'll
But
keep him. Yeah.
But oh yeah, yeah, we're not going to get rid of them. But I always tell myself now, I'm like, you just have to have your kid be really good at high school sports, and the landscape for, if you're a 4-star recruit and you're good with your money, and people are willing to pay you significant amount of money to go to school, that's all you need to accomplish, right? Like you could set up the rest of your life just by doing that, and the opportunities out there. I mean, there are so many more D1 schools that'll pay you money as a good recruit than there are NFL teams. Like there's only 32 NFL teams, so look at the college landscape, and you can make a lot of money if you're good at high school. So it's an interesting, what's the message going to be? Are you going to lose a lot of players that would have been professionals, would have been really good professionals, and they say, "Oh, I'm good. Like I made my money in college. Like I don't need to go play professional. I don't need to go throw my body around anymore." And at the same time, it's kind of like one of the questions I have with this NIL, kind of redirecting it a little bit back to the Jake Butt conversation. If I'm paying these kids to play, I'm curious to get my hands on one of those contracts. Is it like you have to play in the bowl game no matter what it is in order to get this money? Or you
Incentive
know what I
based,
mean?
yeah.
Like what's the structure going to be like? And that's as this continues to grow, that's what I'm interested in seeing is how is it going to evolve in terms of the contract structure? Because people have to get smarter the way that they're paying these kids because they can't, you can't pay a kid $8 million and have it be a complete flop. Like, so how are you going to start structuring these
Yeah.
deals so that it actually makes sense from a business perspective? And those are the types of things I'm pretty interested in finding out, like as this evolves, because things have to change. There's no way that paying somebody 10 million as a complete unknown is going to be a good business model going forward.
And allegedly, that's what a backer for the University of Miami did this year, paid a quarterback recruit $9.5 million to come play for the Hurricanes. And God knows what Texas A&M has been shelling out. That's been, alleged as well. So I always come back to, and I've harped on it on this show, if you're a student athlete, would you rather get just pay for play or maybe an incentive-based deal, as you said, or would you rather on your off day have to go to a car dealership and make an appearance because you're Jeff Atnella of USF Soccer? Hi, I support Hyundai or something like that. Like there's earning it in multiple ways, but one seems like it's more complementary to what you're already doing. Is the other just seems like it's adding to what is already a very difficult schedule for the average student athlete.
See, I'm a fan of the hustle. Like I like the idea of making some people hustle a little bit and making some college kids hustle because I think that's a valuable lesson too.
Mm.
It's how do you prioritize your time? And if you got to go sign autographs for 2 hours and get broken off a free car, that's not the worst.
Fair.
You know what I mean? That's not the worst thing that you could possibly be doing with your time. So I'm interested to see like how it evolves and but that being said, nobody's paying college soccer players millions of dollars to do anything. Yeah,
Someday
I'm
we can all
speaking. I'm
dream.
speaking from a place of hypotheticals and not really something that I'll ever, I don't think would ever cross into my world.
It's crazy because I would love to see players make more money, and there's going to be the haves and have-nots, and that like C.J. Stroud at Ohio State, starting quarterback for the Buckeyes, is getting paid a fair amount of money, and he's got a free car and all that stuff. And then yeah, if you're not as well known of a player, you're probably, as you said, going to have to hustle and earn it. So does that create division in the locker room potentially? Is there division within the team or the coaching staff? Say you're a member of the coaching staff and you don't make as much as a kid who's like just playing and maybe he's not even a starter.
That's professionals. I mean, it's that's what happens in the pros. It's funny because I was going down. We're looking at different ways to do fun advertising and marketing and things like that. So I was going through Cameo and just kind of seeing,
Yeah, yeah.
who's on there, and it's cool. Like Sean Clifford, his Cameo is set up where if you do a cameo with him, it already says he's donating all of his money to a charity. So it's
Oh,
like
that's
all the
great.
money that he makes through Cameo, he's donating to a charity. And there have been a lot of really cool stories about guys that, X amount of dollars I'm giving to my O line, X amount of dollars I'm giving to this charity. And I think that's a very, for a college kid to be doing that, that's a really cool thing to be doing. And that's a good use of NIL. And, of course you want to put money aside for yourself, but just seeing that yesterday, it was pretty cool to see that he's doing that. And I thought that was like a good use of, the ability to make money.
And a lot of credit to Sean Clifford. We recently had Aeneas Hawkins on the podcast to talk about Penn State football and NIL. And Hawkins is a part of Sean Clifford's NIL agency called Limitless NIL, which was making headlines on ESPN because you had not seen a player, an active college football player or active athlete, start their own agency to capitalize on NIL. So I thought it was a really smart move there altogether. Let's talk about Penn State football presently. We mentioned recruiting. James Franklin is heralded as this brilliant recruiter. However, you're not exactly seeing the dividends paid out over the last few seasons in terms of these brilliant recruiting classes. What do you think of the job that James Franklin is doing right now?
It's Good. I think he's doing a good job.
Oh,
Good,
I
not,
really believed you there. Yeah.
yeah. Good, not great. It's I think that, and I have this theory in college football in general that as the head coach, as the front man of a program, you have to be a certain way. You have to carry yourself a certain way. You have to be great at recruiting, and you have to be a good morale locker room builder. But you have to surround yourself with some of the best coordinators that you could possibly find. And
Hmm.
not to compare them at all because they're not comparable. But you look at a guy like Nick Saban,
Mm.
he's constantly surrounding himself with some of the best coordinators that you could possibly imagine. So for me, I love Franklin as a recruiter, and he does a great job of getting people into the building that I don't think we would have been able to get before. And for that, I think he is so valuable. And if we were to lose that, I think that would, that could be a big thing for Penn State. But at the same time, his ability to get that talent that he's getting and getting the most out of them, that's where I kind of start doubting his abilities a little bit. And it's, you know, there are moments and there have been times where it's like, man, like if you could have just packaged this whole thing together the right way, like we had a team that was capable of making the playoffs. There was a team that was
Mm.
capable of winning the whole thing. And I don't know if he's able to get us over that hump, but I'm hopeful that he's able to get coordinators on board that can kind of put the systems in place to utilize the talent that we have. So that's my roundabout answer.
No, I hear you, and I feel optimistic about Mike Yurcich as the offensive coordinator. I'm excited to see what Manny Diaz does as the new defensive coordinator. We're going to miss Brent Pry, but Manny Diaz, I think, is a really good pedigree, former head coach at the University of Miami. That being said, how do you think the 2022 season is going to go for Penn State?
I'm super optimistic. I mean, every time I'll say, I mean, I think we're going to go undefeated, but that's what I say every year.
That's sweet
So
of you.
I got the preseason optimism. I do love that Sean Clifford's coming back. It's, we're not going to get to see who we have on the depth a little bit, but everyone remembers, man, a healthy Sean Clifford had Penn State legitimately looking like one of the best teams in the country. And, him getting injured at Iowa, there's just no way they lose that Iowa game if Clifford is healthy.
I
And
agree
that
with
was
that.
like kind of that moment in the season where things started to go a little bit south for us. So if he can stay healthy, I'm assuming that we have, I don't know the depth chart as well as a lot of people, but I'm assuming that we have unlimited weapons at wideout because we always have weapons at wideout now, which is another thing that Franklin has done well. And I'm assuming that, we're going to be loaded in terms of defense because we kind of have a tradition of, reloading the defense every time. So I'm hopeful, probably go undefeated. I don't know about national title, but at least, go undefeated, win the Big Ten, make the playoff, probably something like that.
That's very nice of you to say. I want to be as optimistic as possible. However, I am a cynical realist, and I don't know. I'm hopeful that everything goes as well as possible. I hope Sean stays healthy because I agree with you. From September and into the first, what was it, 20 some odd minutes of the game against Iowa, he looked great. Penn State looked great. That defense was excellent, and they seem to be rocking and rolling. They do need to get better along the offensive line, and that remains to be seen whether or not they actually did in terms of some recruiting efforts, guys coming back from injury. You're absolutely right in terms of receivers. Parker Washington is going to step up right where Jahan Dotson left off, in my opinion. They got Mitchell Tinsley, who's a transfer from Western Kentucky University. He's opened a lot of eyes. Keandre Lambert-Smith, Malik Mega, the tight end room, three dudes who are just absolute freaks out there that I'm really excited to see how they do. So the defense, I think they sent a bunch of guys to the NFL, so it could be not exactly what we saw last season, but with Manny Diaz, it sounds like they're going to be blitz happy. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I
And that's
appreciate
what I
your
love. But that's the cool thing about Franklin now. It's, and that's the credit that I have to give him. That there's talent. There is talent in the building, and you're not lacking talent at any position. So can we get the most out of that talent? That's the big question. But, Penn State, when I was growing up, if you lost a guy that went in the first round, it would
mm,
take years to recover from that. And you wouldn't be able to find another guy for a long time that could fill that role. But now it's, next guy up, he'll probably be an NFL, he'll probably be drafted in the NFL too. And, it just kind of seems like the 4-star, 5-star guys are just rolling in year after year, which, it hasn't always been the case at Penn State.
true. fingers crossed for 2022. Jeff, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I want to thank Smack Apparel, especially for being the new sponsors of PAYDIRT, a Penn State football show. So you guys can check out the information in the description of this podcast. But again, head to smackapparel.com and type in the promo code PAYDIRT at checkout, and you'll get 5% off your order. Get yourself one of the worst t-shirts, because Ohio State is the worst. Big game against the Buckeyes this year, of course. So, Jeff, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sponsoring the show.
Yeah, of course, man. Love it. Thanks for having me.